now the big debate that everyone's waiting for. I don't know how many of you are going to get up early in the morning tomorrow to watch it, but definitely the world will be watching the final presidential debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. It's an important one. I remember the second one got skipped because it had to be a virtual debate. Trump said he's not going to do it. He contracted COVID-19 and is now back and raring to go on the campaign trail. So much has happened in this election, and it's one that will impact the world, which is why we're focusing on it as well. To speak more on this, I'm joined now by Michael Kugelman and Meera Shankar. Welcome to both of you, and thank you. Great to have you on the show. Michael, is this debate more important than the first one, simply because the gap is narrower? And this is the one chance Trump has to see if Biden messes things up.
Well, I think it's perhaps more important just because it's the last one. I mean, as you noted, there would have been three ordinarily, but the last one was canceled. So this will be the second and final one. It's coming up so close to the election. So it gives the small number of undecided voters in the U.S. a final opportunity to hear out the candidates on the issues. However, I think for me and for so many other people, the question is, will we actually get to hear the views of the candidates? I mean, we know that things were so ugly and uncivil during the first debate. I understand that the moderator will be able to mute the candidates if they go on too long this time. But I think it's very important. Most American voters, I think, know how they want to vote. But for the small number that want to get a sense from these candidates about what they stand for, well, they're only going to get that information if the candidates each have an opportunity to speak and Trump doesn't interrupt that much. Because otherwise, if there's all this interrupting and all that, people won't get information. They'll just get a migraine.
Many people may be watching primetime debates right now would be used to that. But a lot of jokes were spun off after the first debate with the similarities of primetime debates and the presidential debate. The mute button is one part of it, Meera Shankar, but the question is, will this really give voters who are undecided a chance to make up their mind? The fact is, at the end of it, apart from the interruption, neither of the candidates came off as particularly lucid or being able to make very valid points that would impact America and the rest of the world. It wasn't clear what their stand was on anything, really. Do you think that will change, and that is why this debate is important as well?
Well, I think that's why they've tried to change the rules which will govern the debate, including allowing each candidate to speak for 2 minutes on the subject being discussed, while the other candidate is on mute. So this is something which, will give them a short period in which to say what they want to say. But after that, they would be unmuted, though the moderator would have the possibility of muting them if the interruptions are too many or the candidates speak beyond their allotted time. A large number of voters in this election, going by polls, seem to have made up their minds. The number of undecided voters is not so large. Nevertheless, the debate, especially since the second one was called off, would give voters a chance to hear the policies of these candidates on the issues which will be discussed, including COVID-19, American families, race in America, national security. These are the issues which are there on the agenda. So this will be an opportunity for people to listen if, the debate proceeds in a more orderly fashion.
For viewers at home, the big question really is who will win, from the context of how it will impact the world and India specifically. Do you think that question has become a little fuzzier, Meera Shankar. I mean, Trump has behaved sometimes in such a bizarre fashion as, POTUS, that the message has been skewed. People who are wanting to see him out are very clear about that. But from the Indian perspective, clearly, does it make a very big difference whether Joe Biden comes in or Trump stays?
Look, I mean, I think that both would have different priorities. And President Trump has taken the strategic aspect of the relationship forward. But economically, I think there have been tensions. We've seen the withdrawal of GSP for Indian exports of certain goods to the United States. We've seen punitive tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. We've seen the withdrawal of developing country status. We have seen Trump's offers of mediation with Pakistan on Kashmir, and more recently with China. So, and we've seen the very tough, policies on H-1B and L-1 visas included, and also student visas, which have really impacted quite a number of Indian IT companies which do business in the United States. So there have been downsides to Trump's leadership in terms of the relationship with India, and there have been upsides as well. And I would imagine the same would hold true of Joe Biden, because the basic, strategic convergence in the Asia Pacific, which is driving the relationship, I think would remain, whether it is President Trump or President Biden. And you might see a greater emphasis, say, on human rights, on democratic freedoms, on climate change, certainly under Joe Biden. And you probably will see a less, punitive approach to Iran, which might make things easier for India to cooperate with Iran on various ongoing projects. So you will see differences, and you will also see continuities, perhaps differences of priorities.
Michael, you want to come in on this? On, what works better from an Indian perspective? Do you think that a Biden presidency, if he does make it through and does win, as the polls are predicting, would mean a little bit of ease on the global tensions, on the commerce-related friction that India and the US have been facing?
Well, as we discussed on your show before, Tamanna, I don't think there's any bad outcome for India, regardless of who wins this election. As Ambassador Shankar outlined, I think that either candidate would work well for India and for the U.S.-India relationship. It's true, as Ambassador Shankar noted, there have been some blips in the relationship under Trump, not just in terms of some things that the Trump administration has done, but things that Trump himself has said. He said some rather insulting things about India and Indians and Prime Minister Modi himself, which is very unfortunate. But at the end of the day, Trump and Biden, I think, would really see India and the relationship in the same way. There is a strategic imperative. There's a bipartisan view in Washington that partnership with India is a strategic imperative, and that India is arguably America's best strategic bet in South Asia for this effort to counterbalance China. So I think, and that would really is what drives the relationship at the end of the day, the U.S.-China rivalry, and that's not going away. I think that for Washington, China is the key foreign policy issue. That'll be the case whether you have Trump again or Biden. And given that India is seen as such a key player to work with the United States to push back against India, something that's become even more, to push back against China, something that's become even more clear as the India-China relationship has really deteriorated in recent months. So that to me suggests that either outcome would be fine. I would argue, just to close, that perhaps given how significant this partnership is between the US and India, New Delhi would prefer to work with a more predictable, conventional, less mercurial president, and that would be Biden compared to Trump.
Michael, what are you looking at, domestically there in the United States as far as the polls are concerned? From what we're reading and seeing here, they show a Biden lead, but no one wants to bet on it, considering what the experience was in 2016 when everyone was sure that Trump wasn't winning and then was surprised.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, the polls, all of the polls, including in the key battleground states, have have Biden with significant lead. Nationwide, Biden has a very significant lead. But indeed, we know what happened in 2016, where everyone expected Hillary Clinton to win because of the polls, and she did not. Another thing to keep in mind here is that you could certainly win the popular vote in the election and yet still lose the election because of the electoral college system here. And that's why these battleground states are so important. But again, it does seem that Biden has the edge in most of those states. And I will say that the 538 site, which is a very credible and popular website for U.S. election analysis, it claims that Trump only has a 12 out of a 100 chance of winning the election, which sounds very low. And again, that's a very credible site. But so I think Biden does have the edge, but we just never know. And I think the big question is that if Biden is declared the winner, but in a close vote, I imagine that Trump will contest that. There could be legal challenges, and I think it could be a long time before we get a result. Another issue is that with so many people voting by mail because of the pandemic, it could take a longer time to tally those votes, which means there's a good chance we won't know who's won the election by the evening of November 3rd.
All right, it's going to be an exciting one in any case. So thank you so much, Michael Kugelman and Meera Shankar, for joining us as we look forward to what comes out of the last presidential debate in the United States.